All right, Jabosai, good morning. Let us begin. Let's begin by thanking our sponsors, our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Av, Max and Brenda Lapkovsky in honor of Yitzchak Meir's upcoming bar mitzvah, and Riva Mitzner in commemoration of the first yarzheit of our father Larry Schneck, Aryeh Ben Chaim Zichron Livracha. We thank our week of learning sponsors, Mark and Sarah Meisler, for the yarzheit of Mark's grandmother, and Altman Chana Devora Bas Yehuda, and Bill and Razi Eskin Lezecha Nishmas, Bill's father Mordechai Ben David, on the 7th of Av, and Lezecha Nishmas Razi's mother Tzivya Bas Moshe Aaron on the 8th of Av. We also thank our Daf Yomi sponsor for today, Greg Levitan, the beautiful sponsor, with Hakaras Hatov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and all of the women who give us the opportunity to learn the Daf each and every day. Beautiful. Although it sounds like maybe someone's in trouble. You know, that this is, hey, I do say thank you. The truth is, it's so important to be Makir Tov to those who go ahead and facilitate our learning each and every day, especially, again, the wives who give us the time to do so. Very beautiful. Once we open in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshama should have an aliyah, the family Zein Nechama, and in Meretz Hashem we should truly be Makir Tov to all those who help us grow in our learning, facilitate our Yirah Shamayim and our Ruchni. So with that, let us begin. We have an incredible daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is daf Dalid, and we picked up, we got where we say we left off, Mamish on the bottom of Gimel Amud Beis, right at the two dots, and the Gemara says as follows: Haisa gavoa me'esrim ama uba lamata b'karim b'kistos. Well, it's an interesting case. We're still hyper-focused on the sukkah that's lamala me'esrim ama, sukkah that's higher than 20 amas. So now remember again, I have a sukkah that's higher than 20 amas. We although we have not stated it explicitly, the Gemara is assuming that we are paskening like the Tanakama and not like Rabbi Yehuda. And therefore, again, a sukkah that is taller than 20 amas is going to be pasul. The shaila now we're going to deal with is there some way for me to go ahead and remedy that sukkah and somehow go ahead and make it kosher? To which the Gemara says, let's say I do the following. So I have a sukkah that's taller than 20 amas, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the interior of the sukkah with karim and kistos. Karim and kistos literally are pillows and cushions. So what am I doing essentially? I am elevating the ground level of the sukkah. So now, in fact, because remember again, when we speak about a sukkah that's lamala me'esrim amma being pasul, that's talking about the interior space. That the wall from the ground ultimately to the top of the wall is more than 20 amas. If you raise the ground level, then bepashtus, that is able to go ahead and kasher the sukkah. Because remember again, we don't care about the height of the wall from the outside, we only care about the height of the wall of the interior. So if I effectively build up the ground level by putting in there pillows and cushions, it sounds like a good idea, except the Gemara says, lo havi miyut, it doesn't work. Now, why not? Take a look at the last Rashi on the Daf, lo havi miyut, she'ein sofa lo haniach sham kol zayim mehefsid mamono. Because Rabbi say, people aren't going to leave pillows and cushions outdoors in the sukkah for the entire Yom Tiv. Why? Because it's going to get ruined. And because we represent such a hefsid mamon, because we represent such a monetary loss, we'll say, here's what's interesting. The Gemara is suggesting is as follows: that in order for something to go ahead and be considered to build up the ground level of the interior of the sukkah, it has to be batal to the sukkah. It has to be something that you're going to leave there. But if it's something that you're not going to leave there indefinitely, and by indefinitely I mean, how long? 7 days. Just sukkah is all we care about, 7 days. Then Allah Lamaisa, it's not bottled to the ground of the sukkah. If it's not bottled to the ground of the sukkah, then it cannot count to elevate the floors, we'll call it the floor area of the sukkah itself. Now here's what's interesting, top of Dalid, va'afa gav de batlino lekulo. And we'll say, let's say a person says, no, you know what? I'm going to leave the pillows and the cushions in the sukkah for all 7 days. I say it. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Maybe I would say that would work. Still, it doesn't work. Why? Mishum debatla daito eitzel kol da'adam. Because at the end of the day, both say, we've seen this concept many times throughout Shas, which is batla daita eitzel kol da'adam, which is that we are governed by normative behavior. And even if you want to engage in non-normative behavior, your behavior does not become halachically significant. Instead, what we look at, the parameters of normative behavior are defined by what quote-unquote, the majority of regular people do. So regular people are not going to leave their pillows and cushions in, well, so remember again, We're used to the notion of outdoor furniture, right? So remember again, once upon a time, no such thing as outdoor furniture. There was furniture, right? You had stuff you put in your house, and if you left it outside and exposed it to the elements, it would get ruined. So the notion of leaving pillows and cushions outdoors for 7 days, besides the fact, Father, that you're trampling on them, people didn't do that. People just would not do that. Therefore, even if you want to say you're going to do it, batla daito itzel kol adam. Number one is that if you want to effectively minimize the height of the walls by building up the floor level with pillows and cushions, it doesn't work. And even if you explicitly say your intention is to leave it there all 7 days, still doesn't work. Why? Batla daito itzel. We'll say, batla daito itzel kol adam. There's an interesting hashkafic piece of this as well. We'll say, sometimes when a person find themselves in their hashkafas or their outlooks and they're totally divorced from everyone else, sometimes a person has to ask themselves, is it the pshat that I'm right and everyone else is wrong? Or is it the pshat that if everyone else says something is a different way and I say it's this way, I'm wrong? Because batla daito itzel kol adam. Now I will say, remember again, we find instances where the world is wrong and the yachid is right? Who's the paradigmatic example of that? Avram Avinu. Avram was called Avram Ivri. Right? It's called the Ivri because literally he was on the other side of the river than everyone else. The whole world was on the other side of the theological river, and Avram was on the other side. And the world was wrong, and Avram was right. But the truth is, how many Avram Avinus have there been throughout the generations? Right? Not many. There were some. There are times. But I'll say it's very important that in life, sometimes, if everyone else says A and you say B, you're probably not smarter than everyone else. Probably. And a person has to be aware of that. This happens all the time where people kind of dig in, with their shitas and mahalchim and hashkafas. And I'm right. You have to, again, sometimes you are. I want to point out, sometimes the yachid is right and the rabbim are wrong. But sometimes it's batla daito itzel kol adam. And a person has to be humble enough to say that if everyone else, and when I mean everyone, I don't mean the outside world necessarily. I mean everyone who I surround myself with, my friends, my family, my chaverim, my teachers. If everyone else is saying that it's wrong and I'm saying it's right, I might have to adopt the concept of batla daito itzel kol adam. Again, an incredibly difficult balance in life. The Gemara goes like, Teven ubitlo. Listen to this case. What happens if you built up the floor level with straw? So you put straw in the sukkah. Again, we'll say it's all the same thing. I'm trying to elevate the ground level in order to go ahead and minimize the height of the walls. So let's say I put straw in there, ubitlo. Now we'll say bitlo means what? Bitlo means, Rashi says, bifiv l'shiva. I explicitly say, I'm not removing this straw from the sukkah for 7 days. I'm leaving it here. I articulate that. So of course, Taven ubitlo, havim. We'll say that works. That actually works. The choshekin offer ubitlo. So all the more so if you put dirt inside of the sukkah. We'll say that's actually the easiest case, right? You put dirt onto the ground of the sukkah and build up the ground level, thereby minimizing the interior height of the walls. Certainly, again, that works to make the sukkah kosher. So the Gemara says, what about teven ve'in asil lifnoso va'afar stam? We'll say, what if you go out and you put straw in there? Ve'in asil lifnoso. And we'll say, ein asil lifnoso means, look at Rashi, second line from the top. Lo teven ve'in asil lifnoso v'lo yitztarech lifnoso kol yemei achag umiu lo bit lo mamish befiv. We'll say, what happens if you put straw into the ground of the sukkah and you have no foreseeable intention of moving it for the next 7 days, but yet you didn't say anything. Yet you didn't articulate, you didn't explicitly articulate your intention to leave the straw there all 7 days. Or v'afar stam. Both said the case of afar stam is where you just put dirt inside of the sukkah and your intentions are totally unknown, whether it's to leave it there or not leave it there. What's the halacha in those cases? Machlokes Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbanan. Both say this is machlokes Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan. How so? Here we go. So the Gemara says, "Disnan baya shemilu tavanot tzvaros ubitla." So baya shemilu tavanot tzvaros. If you fill a home with straw or with gravel, tzvaros are pebbles or gravel. They both say, now why are you filling your home with straws? See, remember again, we've seen this case before. This is a case, and I will say, you know what the beauty of the daf is? Even if a person doesn't go ahead and remember every single detail, isn't it beautiful that when you see something, you ever meet someone and you say to yourself, I know who that person is, I just don't know their name. It happens to me every Shabbos. But again, right? But again, I know who that is, but I don't know the name. But there's a feeling of connection when you recognize someone, even if you don't know their name. When you go through Shas and you see a case in the Gemara, and you're like, I know I learned it, I don't remember it, but I know that I learned it. There's a certain feeling of connection that's so beautiful. And the ability to connect with Shas, even if you can't remember all the details, when I say you, I mean all of us, can't remember all of the details, there's something so beautiful. Like Shas has become my friend. I don't remember your name, but it's so nice to see you. Okay, maybe you'll tell me your name again for the 15th time. Right? So maybe we'll explain the case for the 15th time again. But there's a certain level of camaraderie that we establish with Shas, which is so beautiful. The case over here is the case of Tuman Tara. We'll say the halachas of Tuman Tara is as follows. Imagine you have a corpse in a home. Now the halacha normally is Tuma ola ubokaz. Tuma ascends upward. Now, the exception to that rule is as follows. If there is a tefach of space between the corpse and the roof, when I say a tefach, at least a tefach of space between the corpse and the roof, then the corpse tuma is contained within the structure. Tuma does not go out. However, if there's no tefach of space, meaning less than a tefach of space, then ultimately, again, tuma ola bakas. So the case in question over here is you have a corpse in the home, and the home is filled with whatever it is. The Gemara over in this case is teven or tzuro, straw or pebbles. In which case we're both saying, therefore, there's no tefach of space between the corpse and the roof. Now we'll say what the Gemara is going to explain, what the Mishnah is going to explain, is that teven or tzuro. Now, if there's no tefach, then what? Then unfortunately the tumah goes all the way up. It extends past the roof. So the Gemara says it depends. Ba'ishmilu teven or tzuros ubitlo mivotlo. If you went ahead and you were mevatel, the teven l'tros, which means your intention, right? You were mevatel, which means you said you're not taking it out. Okay, if you're not taking it out, then what? Then it becomes part of the home. If it becomes part of the home, there is no tefach of space between the corpse and the roof, and therefore the tumah will go ahead and go straight up past the roof as well. The Gemara notes bitlo in, lo bitlo lo. Interestingly enough, the only way that dirt, in this case tzroros, and teven and straw become part of the structure is if you explicitly are mevatel it. So the Gemara says, "V'tani Allah," we learned, Rabbi Yossi Omer, teven ve'ein asilif noso harehu ka'afar stam. Yet Rabbi Yossi held that what? If you have straw, and your intention is not to remove the straw, in other words, you didn't explicitly articulate your intention to leave it there, but we know circumstantially that your intention is not to remove it. Harika afar stam, it's like regular dirt, ubatal, and therefore it is batal to the structure. Afar va'asilif noso, but if you have dirt, but your intention is to remove it, hariyukistam teven velo batal. Ultimately, again, it is like regular straw, and therefore it is not batal. Good. So I will say. So let's analyze this case for just a bit. So the Gemara just brought in the fact that this notion of using straw or dirt to go ahead and alter the halachic parameters of a structure is not unique to Sukkah. We find it by Tuman Tara as well. But let's go back to Sukkah for just a moment. So here's what we know. Can I go ahead and minimize the height of the walls with pillows and cushions? No, doesn't work. It doesn't work. And even if you say explicitly, I'm going to leave it here, it still doesn't work. How do I deal with dirt and with straw? So we'll say, listen to this. So the Shulchan Aruch Paskins, interesting halacha. This is in Sivin Tafresh Lamed Gimel, Sif Dalid. Miata biteven ubitlo. If you put straw inside on the floor of the sukkah. So remember again, I will say, this is my sukkah. That's the malame esr mamo. I want to make the sukkah kosher by minimizing the height of the walls. So I'm going to build up the floor. What do? I put in a layer of straw. I put in whatever it is. I put in 2 amas of straw, right? 2 amas of straw. Now I have walls that are only 18 amas high. Totally fine. What's the halacha? Ubitlo, and you're mevatel the straw, which means mevatel the straw means you articulate, I'm not taking it out of the sukkah. Harei zemiyot. It works. Afar ubitlo, certainly this works with dirt as well. Listen what he writes. Aval stam eino miyut afilu ba'afar ad shi batlenu bipeh. The Shulchan Aruch Paskins that you could use straw and you can use dirt in order to go to make the sukkah kosher by elevating the floor level, but you must explicitly be mivatal the dirt or the straw. In other words, that we don't rely on what we could glean as your I'll call it your circumstantial intentions. It could work, but in order for it to work, you have to say it. Ashivat lena b'peh. The Mishnah Berurah has a whole discussion over here where he says that some say bittul balev is sagi, some say that going ahead and being mevatel in your heart is enough. But lamaisa, the psak of the Shulchan Aruch is you could use straw, you could use dirt to go in and build up the floor level. But ad shivat lena b'peh, you have to go ahead and explicitly articulate. I will say it's interesting, by the way, a little linkage between Sukkah and Yuma. Because remember, again, in Yuma we also discussed that the mitzvah of tshuva, the Rambam discussed the tshuva as well, the mitzvah of tshuva manifests itself primarily in vidui. And how does one accomplish the mitzvah of vidui? Right? Again, bepeh. Vidui is only bepeh. Vidui believe is not vidui. So it's like, because the common denominator is that in order to make something a reality, you have to say it. You have to say it. And it's true on so many levels. Right? By vidui, in order to truly begin the process of tshuva, what's the first step of tshuva? What's the first step? Is hakaras hachet, acknowledgement of sin. And the only time I truly acknowledge I sin is when? When I say it. Right? When I say it. When I actually say, I sinned. And by the way, not I sinned. It's I, whatever the particular Aveira is. And when I explicitly articulate what I've done wrong, that is the beginning of the process of tshuva. Words create reality. Well, so we spoke of this in Yuma, but it bears repetition. This is not just true in tshuva, it's true in general, like in life relationships, how important it is to express to our loved ones how we feel about them. Right? So many times, a husband assumes, my wife knows that I love her. She knows I love her. What do I have to tell her? Of course she knows I love her. Look how hard I work. Look at everything I do. My kids know that I love them. Look how much I go out of my way for them. I will say, it's only real if you articulate it. If you don't articulate, no one knows what's happening in your head. And even if you think people know how you feel about them, so much hurt and so much pain is caused because people just don't tell others how they feel, leaving people to wonder, does my husband love me? Does my father love me? Does my child care about me? Does my parent care? All these things, why? Why you don't need to do it? All you need to do is articulate a pepeh. Once you articulate a pepeh, everything becomes a reality. Tshuva becomes a reality. Love becomes a reality. And a kosher sukkah becomes a reality as well. How much you could accomplish when you're willing to actually articulate the things that you know to be true in your heart. Incredible halacha. We'll say, Weiter, let's go. Haisa gava me'esrim amma. We'll say still more cases. You have a sukkah that's the malam me'esrim. V'hutzin yardin besoch. So we'll say, listen to this interesting case. And now what do I have? I have branches of schach that extend into the sukkah itself. Right? So in this case over here, if you can imagine, so you have a sukkah l'malam me'esrim, but there's schach that's hanging down into the airspace, right, into the 20 amas. So what's the halacha? This is very interesting. If the schach that hangs down provides more shade than sun, then the sukkah is kosher. I will say, what does that mean, the sukkah is kosher? What does that mean? Because effectively, what you have is schach, with kosher schach, within the 20 amas, which effectively then lowers the dimensions of the walls. Interesting case. Ve'im lav, but again, if the schach that hangs down allows for more sun than shade, it's not effective schach, and therefore halacha l'maisa, the sukkah will be possible. Similarly, haisa gava yutfachim. But say now we're switching gears. A minimum size sukkah. Let's say you have a sukkah ultimately again of only 10 tfachim, which is the minimum shear, the minimum height of a sukkah. V'hutzin yard on the soch yod, and you have some schach that hangs in to the 10 tfachim. Savar Abaye lemeimar. Abaye said I should say the same thing. Im chamasa mirov metzilasem kshera. As long as the schach that hangs down into the interior of the 10 tfachim allows for more sun than shade. I will say if it allows for more sun than shade, then what is it? Possible. It's nothing. So essentially, if the schach that hangs into the 10 tfachim is insignificant, then the sukkah is kosher. And the Gemara says, Rava said, no, that's not true. If you have a sukkah that has a minimum dimensions of 10 tefachim, and there is schach that hangs into the 10 tefachim, the sukkah is pasul. Why is the sukkah pasul? Amalei Rava, ha dira sruchahi. We will see this phrase more as we go on Masechah Sukkah. Dira srucham literally means a putrid domicile, which means really an unfit domicile. 10 tefachim is the minimum amount of space, the minimum height. And if you have anything that hangs in or interferes in the airspace of that 10 tefachim, you've simply compromised the integrity of that domicile. That is called a dira srucha, an unfit domicile, and therefore again, ve'ein adam dar b'dira srucha, and a person ultimately again cannot live in a compromised domicile. So we'll say interesting halacha. So again, if you have a sukkah that's l'mala me'esrim, and you have schach that hangs in, right, that hangs down within the 20, inside of the 20, and that schach is kosher schach, meaning that schach by itself provides more shade than sun, the sukkah is effectively kosher. But if you have a sukkah that is exactly 10 tefachim, and any amount of schach, even if it's unfit schach, that hangs into the 10, the sukkah is invalid because it becomes a dira srucha. But I just want to point out, just jumping back to the previous case, I should have mentioned one thing. In the case where you're building up the floor level of the sukkah l'mala me'esrim, and you're building up the floor level with dirt, and when we say if you build it up, it works, I just want to point out, when we say it works, it's true, it takes care of the walls, but remember, any time you take an invalid sukkah with the schach on it, and then you make it kosher by doing something or some other tikkun, it poses a problem with the schach. That's not our sugya right now, but I just want to point out, so just to tell you very quickly, so for example, in that case, let's say the sukkah that's the malave esrim amo, right? And you go at, no problem, you put on 2 amis of dirt, and you're mevatel it bepeh, hineni muchal muzuman levatel offer zul lekayim mitzvah sasei shal sukkah, you make a new floor, perfect, sukkah is fine. Except now, what do you have to do? We know you have to go back and readjust the schach, right? You have to lift up the schach again. Again, the Gemara is not dealing with that now because that's not our topic. I just want to point out that in these cases, the fix is not as simple as just elevating the floor level. But again, we'll come to that. Next case. We'll say some great cases here. Listen to this situation. You have a sukkah that's more than 20 amas high. All right? Itztaba is a platform. So you build it, I will say actually, I think all of us have these pictures in the Gemara, right? You see the pictures there, right? You build a platform, right? So in the pictures you see in the Gemara, that shaded area is a platform, right? Everybody has it? Yeah, I think it's part of it. I think it's... The shaded part is the platform. No. The shaded part is the platform. So I say, so you go ahead and you build an itztava. You build a platform. So most of the shaded part in the picture is the platform. So what happens? Kineged dofen hayim tzai. So listen to this. Apnei kula. If you look at the picture, you're building a platform. Case number 1 is you're building a platform, and if you notice, the platform is against 3 walls of the sukkah. Now obviously, what's the point of the platform? So very simple. I have a sukkah that's the malam esra. I have a sukkah that's 21 amas tall. 21 amas tall. The platform, let's say, is 2 amas in height. Right? So I build a floor level. I build a platform 2 amas in height. So when I stand on the platform, the sukkah is what? Only 19 amas in height. Wonderful. So what's the halacha? Now the platform itself must have the minimum dimensions of a kosher sukkah. We'll say yesterday's daf, what's the minimum dimensions of a kosher sukkah? It's right, Rosho, Rubo, Shulchano, which we define as, like Beis Shammai, which we define as 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim. So as long as that itztaba has, right, the minimum, so the itztaba is hitting all 3 walls, has the minimum dimensions of a sukkah, v'yesh ba'hechsher sukkah, kshera. Ultimately, again, the itztava makes the sukkah kosher. Now, I want to share with you something absolutely amazing. Take a look at Rashi Kshera. Now, Rashi Kshera is in the intermediate wide lines, 2, 4, 5 lines in Kshera. Rashi says something dramatically amazing. Now, when you're looking at this Gemara, before we look at Rashi, don't look. Right? So again, before you look at Rashi, when we say Kshera, what would you assume Kshera means? What's fit? Which part of the sukkah? The platform. The platform, the Pashtus was right. I would have assumed that the platform is kosher. What the Gemara is essentially saying is you're pretty much making a kosher sukkah within a larger non-kosher sukkah, right? So my platform area is kosher. Rashi says no. Kshera is kol hasukkah. I will say this is actually incredible. This is not our sugi now. We're going to come to this later on, so we're not really going to delve into this too much. Rashi says kol hasukkah sheish lagim defanos v'hai hechsher sukkah afilim mina itztaba v'halo. We'll say, so again, this is not our sugi now. We're going to see this a little bit later on Daf Yotes. But just point out the way Rashi understands, the way not everybody understands the sugi this way. Rashi understands that the presence of the itztaba, the presence of the platform, actually makes the entire sukkah kosher. The entire sukkah kosher. Okay, so we'll say back to the Gemara. Again, we're not going to get into the mechanics of that now because that's not our sugya. However, what about the following case? Uminat sad. We'll say case the itztaba number 2. What happens if, so we'll say case number 1 is you're building the itztaba, as the first picture on the daf shows, you're building the itztaba against all 3 walls, right? So we'll say the itztaba, the length of the itztaba is situated against, we'll call it the back wall, and its sides hit the 2 side walls. What about the following case? Minat sad. We'll say, what happens if you only go ahead and build the itztaba against 2 walls? Right, that's the second picture there. Sim yesh mitzvahs itztaba lakosal dalet amas psula. We'll say, watch this. If between the itztaba and the 3rd wall, if between the edge of the itztaba and the 3rd wall, there is more than dalet amas, or there's dalet amas or more, the sukkah is pasul. Pachos ne arba amos. However, if from the edge of the sukkah to the 3rd wall is less than dalet amas, kshera. Ultimately, again, the sukkah is kosher. I will say, what is happening over here? Look at Rashi. Now we're in the widest lines. I will say, this is very, very, very exciting. Second wide line in Rashi. Pachos midal amas kshera. Sha'afhu hochsher al yada. Dekaim alon halacha lamoshe misinai. Demechsherei sukkah al yedei akimas dofen ad arba amos chaser mashu. I can exercise it. Let's listen to this. We are being introduced to something very exciting. The halacha l'Moshe Misinai of dofen akuma. Dofen akuma, Rabbi say, means a bent wall. A bent wall means as follows. That halacha l'maisa, there is a concept that says that if you have a sukkah, now let's look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, sukkah ayidei akimas dofen ad arba amos chaser mashu, v'roas chacha elyon mechuber ledofen haroi kilu hu adofen atzmo va'akum hakener. Let's listen to this. The halacha is as follows. Dofen akuma says that you could view the first 4 amos of schach that is adjacent to the wall as an extension of the wall as well. Rabbi say, now let's illustrate this in this case over here. So imagine looking at picture number 2, you have an itztaba against 2 walls. Now what's the problem, right? In order to make a kosher sukkah, what do I need? 3 walls. So now problem is, how do I bridge that itztaba to wall number 3? So the Gemara says, well, it depends. How far is the itztaba from wall number 3? If the itztaba is less than dalet amas, then I will say effectively what we view is the wall and the schach between the wall and the itztaba as one prolonged wall. One prolonged wall. And if that's the case, then effectively wall number 3 reaches the edge of the itztaba, making the sukkah kosher. That is a halacha l'Moshe Misinai of dofen akuma. Of dofen akuma. Ultimately, again, but it only works. I want to tell you something. Do you know, I get this sukkah shaila every year, and it happens, interestingly enough, if you build your sukkah, I'll tell you where dofen akuma comes up all the time. If you build your sukkah next to your home, so literally, this just happened. I mean, not this year, but last year. If you build your sukkah next to a home, so imagine for a moment you're building your sukkah next to a home. To illustrate this, let's make it easy. Let's say you have a one-story structure, right? Or a very low roof line. So I want to use one of the walls of my home as the wall for the sukkah, but I have a low hanging roof to the point that my roof hangs over my schach. So I will say, you know how like roofs, there's a technical term for it. You know how like the roof slopes, and then there's like an area underneath the roof. All right, you know what I'm talking about? Like there's, what is it? Overhang. Eaves. Good. The part of the roof that overhangs the roof, right? So I'll say, interestingly enough, the shaila is, that's actually going to be in my sukkah. That's going to be in my sukkah. So now I have the overhang of my roof in the sukkah, but I need the wall. I need the wall. I don't want the overhang. So I will say, what's the halacha? As long as that overhang is less than Dalit Amos, essentially we view it as a bent wall, and it does not invalidate the sukkah. It's maisim b'chol yomtiv. That is, it's interesting. Again, I think most times people's roofs, if you have a 2-story home, so your roof is higher, it doesn't really matter all that much. But lamaisa, if you're using a wall of your home with a low-hanging roof, again, it happens all the time. That's Dofen HaKumah. So Dofen HaKumah says that as long as that overhang is less than Dalit Amos, we essentially view it as a bent roof, and it is not a problem. Again, back to the Itztaba case. So the Gemara says, Pachos mi arba amos kshera. So we'll say, my kamash malon darmina Dofen HaKumah. So what are you coming to teach me? That we say Dofen HaKumah. We already learned that. Tanina. Bayish and Niftach. We'll say, here's the paradigmatic case of Dofen HaKumah. Listen to this. Bayish and Niftach v'sichech al gabav. We'll say, listen to this. You have a home that the roof opened up. The roof opened up, v'sichech al gabav. So we'll say, so listen to this case, right? What do you want to do? You want to make your dining room into your sukkah. So what do? You put a retractable roof on top of your dining room. Put a retractable roof on top of your dining room. You put the schach right there. Fantastic. Only one problem, which is you need walls. And the problem is now, ultimately, again, the walls of your home are not right underneath the schach. So I will say, imagine this image for just a moment. I have over my dining room table, I have the schach, but then I have my ceilings, and then I have my walls. So what's the halacha? So Baishin niftach v'sichech al gabav im yesh min hakosel sichoch dalet amas. So pasal psula. If halacha l'maisa, there's more than dalet amas between the wall and the schach, then the sukkah's pasal. Hapachos mikan kshera. But if there's less than dalet amas, ultimately, again, the sukkah will be kosher. So I'll say, how could that be? There's a ceiling in between my schach and the wall. It's not a ceiling, I will say. What is it? It's a bent wall. Why does it work? Because the Ribono Shel Olam said it works. Right? I will say, sometimes you just have to be a good soldier. The Ribono Shel Olam said, that's Allah Moshe Misinai. It works. There's incredible hashkafas and Dofen HaKumah as well, but we'll have to say that for a different time. In any event, the Gemara says, so therefore we'll say, this is halacha bent wall. So the Gemara says, why are you teaching me this case of the Itztaba? If you're coming to teach you the halacha of Dofen HaKumah, we already learned the halacha of Dofen HaKumah. So watch this. What would you have said? Hasam hu dechazi Dofen. I would have thought that maybe Dofen HaKumah only applies with what? With a wall that is less than 20 amos tall. Because that's already a wall. Aval hocha de lo chazi Dofen emalo. But maybe a wall, because also remember again, the backdrop to this case is why am I building the platform? Why am I building the Itztaba? To diminish. So I would have thought maybe the halach of Dofen HaKumah only applies to a wall that's less than 20 amos. But a wall that's more than 20 amos, maybe Dofen HaKumah doesn't apply to it. To which the Gemara says, Kamash will say that no, that Dofen HaKumah applies even to a wall that by itself would not be kosher for sukkah. So again, case number one of the Itztaba is I build it, so to speak, in the middle where it touches all 3 walls. That's an easy case. The entire sukkah becomes kosher. Case number 2 is I built the Itztaba only adjacent to 2 walls. I need to attach them to the 3rd wall. No problem. As long as it's within Dalet Amos of wall number 3, you could say Dofen HaKumah. More than Dalet Amos, it's not going to work. We'll say next case. Someone once called me to Shala, by the way, about he was going ahead and making plans for his dining room to make a retractable roof because he wanted to go ahead and make a sukkah in his dining room. He was too tired of putting up a sukkah on this. So the first thing I told him is, you're lazy. That's number 1. You're lazy, right? And I said, number 2, if you have that much money to be able to do that, I think maybe you have to think about better causes to support than dining room sukkahs. He stopped calling me, but again, that's a different. I think he built it. I'm pretty sure he built it. So the Gemara says as follows. So the Gemara says like this. Next case. Haisa gava mechaf ama ubana itztava be'emtze isa. So let's listen to this case. Same case. Sukkah l'mal me'eser mama. So right, sukkah that's 12 and 20 amas. And what happens now? We'll say case number 3 is you're building the itztaba in the middle of the sukkah. In the middle of the sukkah. So remember, case number 1 was against all 3 walls. Case number 2 was against 2 walls. Case number 3 is mamish the middle of the sukkah. So what's the halacha? Im yesh misvas itztva l'dofen arba amos l'chol ruach psula. Pachos mi'arba amos ksheira. So we'll say, so no problem. How does it work? As long as the itztaba is what? Is what? Within daled amos to 3 walls, you could apply dofen akum, and the itztaba makes the sukkah kosher. If it's more than daled amos, then the sukkah is possible. So Gemara says, okay, my kamash malon darminan dofen akum hanuhach. So I don't understand, why do you need this case? You coming to teach me about a case of dofen akuma, about the halacha Moshe. We already learned it. It's already. We'll say, watch this. Mao detema dofen akum miruach achas arminon. Aval miruach, aval kol ruach v'ruach lo. I might have thought, Rabbi say, that maybe the halacha of dofen akuma only applies from one direction. In other words, you could use dofen akuma for 1 wall. But you can't use dofen akuma for 3 walls. That's a bit too much. Kamash malon. We'll say, interesting enough, kamash malon, you could use dofen akuma for all 3 walls. Which I will say makes sense because remember again, the way the Gemara actually illustrates the laws of dofen akuma is bayis sheniftach. It's your dining room ceiling that you want to open up, where you have no connection to any walls. So again, but that's the halacha. The havamina was dofen akuma only works from one direction. Kamash malon, even if you want to use all 3 walls through dofen akuma, it works. Incredible. Haisa pechusam yod. Rabbi will say, now we're switching gears. So we're going now to a sukkah of minimum dimensions. I have a sukkah less than 10 tefachim. Rabbi will say, what is the halacha concerning a sukkah that has less than 10 tefachim of height? Puzzle. It's not good. Not good. So what's the halacha? So Rabbi will say, what are you doing? This is interesting. So what are you doing? You're digging out. So you're excavating. I'm going to dig out the floor by pushing. Beforehand we were elevating the floor level. Here we are. It's the opposite of elevating. Okay, digging. Good, right? I'm digging. Right? I'm digging out the floor. Right, making a newer floor level. Right, a lower floor level. So what's the halacha? Listen to this. So im yesh misvas chakak ulakosel gimel tvachim psula. And I will say now in this case, I'm not excavating the entire floor. What am I excavating? My minimum shear. What's my minimum shear? Zayin by Zayin. Rosh Hashanah. So we'll say, so again, I'm only excavating an area of Zayin al Zayin. So what's the halacha? Im yesh misvas chakak ulakosel gimel tvachim psula. If there is more than 3 tefachim between the excavation and the wall, the sukkah is pasul. On the base, pachos mishalosh tefachim ksheira. But if there's less than 3 tefachim, then ultimately it's kasha. We'll say, now what's 3 tefachim? What halacha is that? Lavud. Another halacha on Moshe Sinai. Namely that again, anything within 3 tefachim of something else is considered to be attached to that item. So it's very interesting. So now if I go ahead and I excavate, as long as the excavation is within 3 tefachim, then ultimately again the sukkah is kasha. More than 3 tefachim, it's not kasha. So what's going on over here? The Gemara says, I don't understand. Maishna hasam the amrit pachos me arba amos, u'maishna hacha the amrit pachos me shalsha tefachim. Now we'll say, the Gemara says, I don't understand. Let's go back for just a moment. In the case of the itztaba, right? In the case of the itztaba, we'll say, so remember again, case number 1 was sukkah l'mala me eser mama. The sukkah is too high, too tall. So what do? I build in a platform, but again, in case number 2, I only have a platform against 2 walls. I need a 3rd wall. What's the halacha? I need the platform to what? To be within 4 amos of wall number 3. Now, we'll say 4, that gives you a lot of space to work with, right? 4 amos is not an if, right? An amos is about 1.5 feet. So daled amos is 6 feet. 6 feet, it gives you a pretty good amount of space to work with. Yet now over here, when I have a sukkah that's pachos miyud, sukkah's too short, I'm excavating. It only works, and I'm excavating in the middle. In order for the excavation to be good, it has to be within 3 tefachim, which we'll say is a much smaller shear. So I don't understand why. Shouldn't I apply the same halacha of what? Daled amos. To which the Gemara will say, watch this. The Gemara says, Hasam di'isei ledofen pachos me'arba amos sagya. Hacha di'leshavi ledofen pachos mishlosha tefachim pachos mishlosha tefachim in ilola. But here's the fundamental distinction. When you have a sukkah that's l'mala me'esrim amma, do you have a wall? Do you have a wall? Yes. You have a wall. You have a problem with your wall, that your wall is too tall for sukkah, but do you have a conceptual wall? And the answer is yes. Okay, once you have a conceptual wall, as long as you are within some distance of it, even Dalet Amis, we could attach that wall to the platform. In a structure that is pachos miyud, that means you have a wall that is less than 10 tefachim. Do you have a wall? No. So because you don't have a wall, the only way to make that wall into a wall is if mamish you attach it to the excavation. Well, in order for the wall to be attached to the excavation, love it. You need it to be less than 3 tefachim. So we'll say herein lies the fundamental distinction. If the wall is already a wall, but it's just a dinin going ahead and connecting it to the itztaba, that's dofen akuma. That's dofen azalach Moshe Sinai. But if the wall you need to attach to the excavation is not halachically a wall, it's not a wall. So we'll say, to say it a little bit differently, the halacha of dofen akuma applies to what? A dofen. You have to be a wall. You have to be a wall if you want to be subject to the halacha l'Moshe Sinai of dofen akuma. And the minimum definition of a wall is something that has 10 tefachim or more. If you're not a wall, you can't get dofen akuma. So the first thing you need to become is you have to become a wall. You have to become a wall. So once you become, and the way to become a wall is how? Through lavud. If you could become lavud to the excavation, then Allah Almighty you're made into a wall. Hence the distinction between the case of the itztaba and the case ultimately of the excavation. Incredible. Haisa gavoa me'eser mama. So it turns out, again, it's a very simple distinction. Dofen akuma, that halacha l'Moshe Sinai only applies to a wall. The minimum definition of a wall is 10 tefachim or more. In the case that we're dealing with over here is, the wall is less than 10 tefachim. It's not a wall, therefore no dofen akuma. The only way to make it into a wall is if it's lava to the excavation. Because if it's lava to the excavation, then it's considered to be attached to the excavation. If it's attached to the excavation, then what? Then you have the minimum height of the wall. Incredible. That's another interesting case. Let's say the wall was back. We're back to the more than 20 hours. We're flip-flopping between the cases. So, let's say the wall was taller than 20 amas. Ubana ba amud shugava asar tvachim. V'yesh bo hechsher sukkah. Both say, listen to this. You have a sukkah that's more than 20 amas tall. And inside that sukkah, you build a pillar, an amud. Let's say that amud, that pillar, has the minimum dimensions of sukkah, which means that pillar is how big? 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim. Okay, so we'll say, what's the halacha? V'yesh hechsher sukkah. Savar abayi l'meimar good asik mechitzta. Oh, back to our Aryeh Ben days, we'll say. So Abayi says, what can you do? You can go ahead and sit on top of that pillar and make the top of that pillar your sukkah. What about walls? Abayi said, good asik mechitzta. We'll say, what's good asik? Good asik means when you take bottom walls and extend them upward. So we could view the sides of the pillar as extending upward to the schach, and therefore, again, the pillar, the bottom of the pillar, right, the top of the pillar, I should say, becomes the ground level of your sukkah. We view the mechitzos as if they're extending upwards, and the schach above you is kosher for your sukkah. Amli Rava, no, that does not work. But inon mechitzos hanikaros v'leka. I will say, maybe that works for Eruvin in certain respects, but for sukkah, you need what's called mechitzos hanikaros, recognizable walls. Sukkah will not work with walls that don't physically exist. Again, we'll qualify that statement as we go on a little bit. But lamaisi, you need what's called mechitzos hanikaros, not good asik mechitzos. Shabbos say, now once we started the discussion, look where we go with this. Tan Rabbanan, na'atz arba kundisin v'sichei chagavan. Well, say the following situation. You put 4 poles in the ground, just 4 poles, no walls, just 4 poles, and you put schach on top of the poles. So what's the halacha? Rabbi Yaakov machshir. Rabbi Yaakov says ultimately, again, such a sukkah is kosher. The Chachamim postlin, and the Chachamim say that such a sukkah is pasul. Okay, so we'll say now let's define the parameters of this. Because what do you mean? How could Rabbi Yaakov say that a sukkah like that is kosher when there are no walls? There are no walls. So how could he? We'll say, so now watch this. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna wants to suggest as follows. The machlokes Rabbi Yaakov and the Chachamim is when? Al svas hagag. We'll say, imagine the following situation. Imagine you have a home, and again, remember, we always operate with flat-roofed homes. So now you have a house, you put 4 poles on the 4 corners of your roof. On the 4 corners of your roof, and you put the schach on top of it. Rabbi Yaakov savar aminan good asik mechitzta. Rabbi Yaakov holds Rabbi say that when you put the four poles in the four corners of your home, how do we view it? As if the sides of your home extend upwards, and those are the walls of your sukkah. But the Rabbanan hold that we do not say gudasik. So it's machlokes in gudasik. Aval be'emtza hagag. But if you put the four poles in the middle of your roof, everyone agrees, divrei akol psula. Everyone agrees that such a sukkah will be possible, because if you put it in the middle of your roof, then what? There are no walls, because you can't say gudasik. Rav Nachman, so we'll say that's Rav Huna's interpretation of the machlokes. Rav Huna Amar be'emtza hagag machlokes. Rav Huna says no, the machlokes is in the middle of the roof as well. So Bailahu. So, Rav Nachman, do you mean that in the middle of the roof is machlokes, but both Rabbi Yaakov and the Rabbanon will agree that if you put the poles on the corners of the roof, the sukkah is kosher? Ol dilma bein bezu machlokes, or maybe it's a machlokes ultimately again in both cases, to which the Gemara says teku. We're not sure. We're not sure what the parameters of the machlokes are. So meisvei na'at dalud kundisin ba'aretz v'sichich al gaban was another case. You place four poles in the earth, and then you put the schach on top of it. Rabbi Yaakov machshir v'chachamim postin. Rabbi Yaakov says the sukkah is kosher, and the chachamim say that the sukkah is pasul. I b'ha'aretz deke'emtza gagdami v'kamachshir Rabbi Yaakov. We'll say, now what's the case over here? The case here is you're just planting four poles in the ground. Four poles in the earth is like what case, Rabbi say? Is the equivalent of what? Four poles in the middle of the roof. And yet still, Rabbi Yaakov is arguing. And Rabbi Yaakov is suggesting that such a sukkah should be kosher. Tiyufta de Rav Huna tiyufta. Both sides would effectively refute Rav Huna's interpretation of the machlokes. Vod, be'emtzahu de pligi, aval asas agag divrei akol kshera. Furthermore, again, are you going to say that it's only in the middle of the roof that they argue, but on the edge of the roof, everyone agrees that the sukkah will be kosher? Ultimately, again, we could refute Rav Huna on both counts. And Rabbi say that both parts of Rav Huna's statement ultimately, again, are refuted. Amar lecha Rav Huna, no. Pligi be'emtza hagag v'odin asvas hagag. The truth is, the machlokes Rabbi Yaakov and the Rabbanan is actually both cases. Whether you put the four poles on the corners of the roof, or whether you put it on the middle of the roof, right? Rabbi Yaakov will say that halacha l'mais in all cases is kosher. The Rabbanan will say in all cases is pasul. So why do we go ahead and bring up the machlokes when you put the poles in the middle of the roof? Rabbi said to teach us the power of Yaakov's position, that Rabbi Yaakov holds that even if you place the poles in the middle of the roof, halacha l'maisa, he still holds that such a sukkah could be kosher. Rabbi saying, now the mechanics of a sukkah like that, right? How that actually works is actually subject to some level of machlokes. Again, we'll get to this sukkah, because Rabbi says we're going to see what we do require for sukkah is mechitzos hanikaros, recognizable mechitzos, which means the ability to rely on things like good asik or good achis or pi tikra yored v'sosem are going to be problematic, but we'll see that a little bit more inside. Says the Gemara, Tana Abanan, Naas arba'a kundisin ba'aretz. We'll say one more case. You take four poles, right? You take four poles and you put them in the earth. V'sichich al gaban. And you put schach on top of them. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, we'll say now watch this. Another qualification to this halacha. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, Roin, kol she'ilu yechakaku v'yachloku v'yesh bohen tefach lekan v'tefach lekan nidonin mishum diyumad. And Rabbi saying that this is very interesting. So remember again, we saw this Rabbi say once before. Remember again in Erevin when we spoke about drawing water. Right? So remember again, what's the problem with drawing water? Imagine you have a well that is situated in Rosh Hashanah. What's the problem with drawing water on Shabbos? What's the problem? A well often has the dimensions of what? A Rosh Hashanah. So the problem is, right, because a well could be daled by daled with 10 tefachim of height. So ultimately, again, you can have a problem of drawing water from one Rosh to another Rosh. So the way to do that, so how do you remedy that? You enclose the area. But what happens if I can't enclose the area? There was a special dispensation, if you remember again, of pasi biraos. Pasi biraos were these diyumadin, right? These L-shaped planks that you positioned at four corners and essentially allowed you to view the entire area as being closed. Now, we'll talk about that in just a moment. So, Rabbi Yaakov is borrowing that a little bit over here. Rabbi Yaakov says like this: if you have four poles at four corners, right, you have Succah on top. If kol she'ilu yachakaku v'yachloku v'yesh bo tefach, imagine now we're assuming you're dealing with round poles. If you could imagine if there's enough polage, I just spit up that word, but I'm going to use it, right? If there's enough polage that you could go ahead and carve out an L-shaped pole that has a tefach in each direction, right? A tefach in each direction. V'yesh tefach lekan lekan nidonin mishum diyumad. This would work. This would create effective partitions for Sukkah. Now, what I want to point out over here is this is different than Pasei Biros. For the well, remember again, what did you need? You actually needed an Amma in each direction, right? You needed an L-shaped partition with an Amma in each direction. By Sukkah, Rav Yaakov is saying all you need is a tefach. Ve'im lav. But at the end of the day, if it's less than a tefach, then it won't work to serve as mechitzos. Shahai Rabbi Yaakov Omer, diyumade sukkah tefach. So I will say an interesting sheet of Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov holds that the same way that you could enclose a well with pasi biros, these diyumadin was like dio mu'umad, right? These two are called, I don't know what are called two-prong or two-directional planks. And you could enclose the well on four sides as long as a plank has one amma in each direction. Rabbi Yaakov says by sukkah you could do the same thing, but you don't need an amma in each direction. Instead, what do you need? A tefach in each direction. If it has a tefach in each direction, that works as a mechitza for sukkah. Less than a tefach, it won't work. The Chachamim say no. Ad shiu shtayim kilchasan ushlishas afil tefach. Rabbi say the Chachamim argue on Rabbi Yaakov, you're wrong. In order for a sukkah to work, a sukkah must have a minimum of 3 walls. Now we will discuss, I will say, that the way we define 3 walls is how? 2 complete walls, and the third wall could be a shishis afilu tefach. The third wall does not have to be a complete wall. The third wall could even be just a tefach. But you need 2 complete walls, and the third wall that has at least a tefach, that is the minimum hechsher sukkah. And we know that halacha lamaisa, that is how we paskin. So we reject Rabbi Yaakov. In other words, we do not, that's why again, if you put 4 poles on the edge of your rooftop, you can't rely on good asik or good ase or a good achis or any of those. You need actual mechitzos. Now again, Rabbi will say, we will discuss, you can build the sukkah out of lavud. This was a big thing, this came up. I just point out this became a big issue during Corona, where people wanted sukkahs with more airflow, right? So you could technically build a sukkah made out of lavud if you were to take straps, right, and put that within 3 tefachim of each other. You could build a halachic wall. But again, if you think about it, that's also mechitza hanikar. There's a recognizable wall that's there. It has spaces. But halachically, those spaces are viewed as if we'll discuss the lavud sukkah, but those spaces are viewed as if they don't exist. Right, but lamais has mechitza nikar. So therefore, again, we also reject Rabbi Yaakov's idea of 4 poles, each with a tefach of space. We pass like the Chachamim that in order for a sukkah to be kosher, there must be a minimum of 3 walls, 2 complete walls, and a minimum of a tefach for the third wall. And we'll stop over here for today. Shkoyach. Also just a reminder, the Siyum is tonight, in Yirtzeh Hashem, at 7 o'clock p.m. Sa'i told me it is not too late to go ahead and join the Siyum. The smell that we had, that you smell, that is the brisket smoking, right? No, that doesn't sound right. The brisket's not smoking, but the brisket being smoked. I guess that's the better way. Let's say, Yirtzeh, see everyone, Mincha 6:50. Sure. Are there